again, thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And to kind of get started, I want to ask you about your personal journey and how you came to integrate applied neuroscience into your yoga practice and teaching. Like, what inspired you to explore the connection between the body and the mind and the nervous system?
I think probably like anybody, especially when it comes to health and wellness, it came from my own experiences because um, I got into yoga because of uh, needing to, I suppose, heal or change. I knew something needed to change, and I found eventually that yoga was gave me a lot of positive transformation, right? Just to keep it very broad. But then I found that a lot of the traditional yoga postures and the ways of doing yoga traditionally were causing me a lot of harm and injury. And that's when I got into looking more into anatomy and learning about hypermobility and going down that route for a while around helping to educate other people about hypermobility and how those of us with this condition need to practice quite differently to how a lot of traditional yoga is taught. Um, but in the meantime, I had a couple of experiences where I went like first I went to this guy, and he was kind of, well, both, there were two different, like, I don't even know what to call them. They're like modern day witch doctors. Like, they wouldn't call themselves witch doctors, but like they're I suppose they called themselves like physiotherapists, but they were just so much more than that. They were these and they weren't related at all. They were two different people in two different parts of the country, doing two different things. But what they both had in common is that they had both done a lot of training beyond just physical therapy. They had learned, like, I think both of them had done a lot in chiropractic. Sorry, not chiropractic. I don't know why I said that. Acupuncture, and as well as and so looking at the meridians and everything, as well as what's it called? Like kinesiology, I think. But then also in the nervous system. And both of these people also, I saw them at two different parts of my life, but they both, like, I was able to go in and they just kind of like did a few things, did some testing on me, and I was able to walk out of there completely like just done. I don't need to go back ever. But like, and it's like, what sort of magic are they doing? And why aren't all physical therapists doing this? And so it happened like the first time that I went and saw somebody, the first person that I saw like that was, it was before I was even into yoga. And I just kind of always remembered him like, wow, this like magical, this guy that just had healing powers and everything. And then later on in my life, I came across another person like this. And so I asked him, and this is after I started teaching yoga and stuff. And so I was just like, I said to him, I was like, I want to be able to do what you do. Like, where did you train? Where did you pick up all this knowledge? And he had a very long story and da 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 da. And but he said if I would start with Z Health. I remember that's what he said. I would start with Z Health. And I'm like, well, what is Z Health? And he said they're an online school and they teach how to incorporate neurology into whatever kind of movement practice you do. And so that's where it began. I looked into Z Health, and I remember hearing about, it was just like lots of different things like that. Like, I remember they said something about the vestibular system, and that was something that I had heard about before, being linked to chronic pain and possibly things like fibromyalgia. And I was like, what is this vestibular system? I don't know what it is. But now I'm hearing it all over the place. And now V Health is talking about it. And so that's kind of what brought me to it. And so then yeah, I was supposed to go to their in-person trainings. The pandemic hit, and so those were canceled. And so then, like everybody else, I was locked up inside, but they put their trainings online. And so I just started going through all of these trainings, and it was like for the first time in my life, it it felt like I had all the puzzle pieces. You know, when you learn about anatomy, you learn about the bones and the muscles and the tendons, and you're like, okay, yeah, like some things start to make sense. And, you know, I studied the fascia and the fascia lines, and I was like, okay, yeah, some things make sense. But I still didn't feel like I had answers. And then with neurology and the one of the most basic things, the most fundamental things with it is that it's binary. You can break it down to a very simple binary equation where the brain decides, is something safe or is it threatening? And every single thing, every little thing in your entire existence, your brain is going, is this safe or is it threatening? And if it's safe, then all good. If it's threatening, your brain is going to try and do something to keep you safe. And with that, it was just like so many things started to make sense and click into place. And it was like I got the whole picture finally. That was a very long answer. I hope that's okay.
I love it. Please, please, long answers are always welcome. And I want to dive a lot deeper into all of that amazing neuro stuff. But I just want to go back a little bit and ask you, if you don't mind answering, what was it that you wanted to change? Because you said that there were things that needed to change for you going into this journey. And yeah, I'm curious what those things are.
Oh yeah, it was just, I mean, nothing major, just the kind of thing that probably uh, gets a lot of people into yoga. I was in my late 20s and starting to kind of feel some aches and pains. And I thought I wasn't expecting to feel like this until I was in my 80s, and I'm only 27, 28. Like, why do I have low back pain and knee pain and shoulder pain? And um, yeah, I decided that maybe I needed to start doing some kind of like dedicated exercise because up until that point, I'd never done any kind of, you know, gym classes or anything like that. I just kind of relied on being generally active and a fidgety person to uh, contribute to my exercise. And also I was I was quite sort of stressed, just going through a stressful time at work, and didn't really have a way to, I didn't have any tools for managing that stress apart from getting drunk on the weekends with my friends and, um, you know, and complaining about all of the things in my life. And I think that, yeah, that wasn't so much like what got me into yoga, but it was really just the physical side of it that kind of got me into it. But then, like I'm sure most anybody can testify to, it was that more mental side of things that that kind of kept me interested in it and made me realize there's so much more to it than the physical, because suddenly I found myself thinking, maybe, yeah, maybe this can be a way to deal with my stress instead of just going out and drinking on the weekends. Um, and, you know, talking shit with my friends about my boss who is actually just doing her best, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like wishing your life away kind of thing, watching the clock go by and waiting for the weekend. And I can totally relate to that because I also started with mostly the physical practice. And I just realized that it would only take me up to a certain point. So it's so fascinating how the brain, rewiring the brain can have such a massive impact, not only on your body, but just on every area of your life. The fact that your approach to yoga involves rewiring the brain and the nervous system, can you delve a little bit more behind the mythology and how it enhances physical and mental well-being?
Um, so what do you mean by the mythology?
Well, the system, like what does it actually mean? Because I feel like it's a lot of big terms that we throw around, and I'm not sure many people understand what applied neurology actually means when it comes to movement development and well-being. For example, I
Okay.
don't think many people understand that by actually addressing your higher order systems, I don't think most people even know what the higher order systems are. How can that have an effect on my motor output and also just generally how I feel day to day?
Okay, I see. So, yeah, I suppose the way to think about it is just appreciating, first of all, that everything that we do, we're able to do it because of the brain, right? If you think about a person who, unfortunately, for whatever reason, they're brain dead, um, their brain is not able to, their brain isn't doing its job, right? Their brain is dead. They have to have machines doing everything for them, pumping their blood, making them breathe. Um, because nothing happens without the brain. And so everything, everything that we do, every movement that we make, every sensation that we feel, everything that we see with our eyes, hear with our ears, taste with our tongue, smell with our nose, the thought that we have, the thoughts that we think, the emotions that we feel, everything happens because of the brain. And so we are, if you want to say like, so say you take a like we do brain drills. We do brain drills. Like what does that mean? We're doing something that stimulates some specific area of the brain. But everything can be a brain drill. You know, what we're doing right now, sitting here talking to each other, it's activating the brain to do those things. So when we take neurology and what we know about the brain and we apply it to movement and to yoga, we're fine tuning it a little bit. We're doing it a little bit more intentionally. So right now, our brains are doing lots of things to make this conversation happen, right? The people listening, their brain is doing lots of things to help them interpret these sounds that are coming out of my mouth, out of their speakers, into their ears, understand what it all means. And that's all kind of happening accidentally, I guess, or unintentionally. But we can take what we know about the brain and, like I said, activate sort of different areas of the brain for a specific purpose. So that's kind of what we're doing is just taking our knowledge. It's just like you would take your knowledge of like what exactly a bicep is and apply it to doing bicep curls to specifically target and strengthen that one muscle, right? Um, so the same thing goes for the brain. And then to go to, and so what this does is because, again, a very simple way of looking at all of neurology is we've just got three steps. You've got the input. So that's everything coming from the outside world or from outside of the brain, even. So from your gut, what your eyes are seeing, what your skin is feeling, what your movements that are making, what kind of sensations those are creating, all of that as is input, and it's information that goes to the brain. The second part is interpretation. So your brain then interprets, well, what does this mean? And going back to that binary, and is it safe or is it threatening? And then, depending on what the brain has interpreted from this input, it creates an output. And that would be a movement, or whatever else. And so, for example, I'm walking and I feel something brush against my hand. That would create an input. The brain would interpret that input. Was I expecting something to brush against my hand, or is that unexpected? So maybe it's threatening because I wasn't expecting it. I don't know what it is. So the output might be for me to jump back, right? So given that, what we're doing is just we're using different ways to intentionally add input into the brain so that we can then get an output that we are seeking. And so going back to the higher order systems that you mentioned, those higher order systems are basically where it's just appreciating that our visual system is the top way that our brain gets information and decides what's going on in our environment. Below that is the vestibular system, which is just the big fancy word for the inner ear. It's your sense of balance. It's your sense of what direction you're moving in and what direction is up versus what direction is down, right? So that's what keeps you from falling over. And if anybody listening is like me, you might be thinking, wait, that's the second most important thing to your brain? It seems so basic, but yeah, because it is very important that you're able to go through life and not succumb to gravity at every moment, right? So those two things are more important to the brain, and your brain is going to take those two pieces of information, or the information that it gets from those two systems, your visual system and your inner ear, above, as more important than your proprioception, which is what's happening with the rest of the body. But of course, we know that when we go to the gym or we go to any kind of traditional movement classes, the focus is always on the proprioception, the neck down, like what's happening in the body. And we don't really think about the visual system or the vestibular system. And sometimes that's fine, because the visual system and vestibular system, they are still doing their job as we go through these movements, right? If we're doing squats in the gym, the vestibular system is telling the brain, okay, we're going up and now we're going down, and now we're going up and now we're going down. And if that's all working fine, then it's all good. But the issue comes when people, and it's very common, have some kind of deficit in their visual system and their vestibular system. And if you think about it, like how many people wear contact lenses, how many people wear glasses or have had some sort of corrective eye surgery, that's, it's very common. And that's the visual system. Now think about the fact that it's probably just as common that people have similar deficits in their vestibular system as well, right? And so the brain is getting information from the visual system and the vestibular system while we're doing our squats in the gym, perhaps, that is then creating, because there might be a deficit, the brain is going, not safe. This is threatening. And so it wants to keep you safe. The brain's number one job is to keep you safe. That's all it cares about, is survival. And not next week, not tomorrow, not in an hour. It wants to keep you safe right now in this moment. And so if it thinks, oh, I don't think that my human is safe while they're doing the squats because I don't really know which way is up, actually, because the vestibular system is not sending me very clear information, it will try and slow you down. And that's why then maybe, let's say you find that you get really fatigued just doing a couple of squats, or maybe your ankle mobility and your knee mobility isn't what you think it should be, and you're not able to go very deep in your squats, or just a whole host of potential issues could occur that may have nothing to do with your legs. I hope that all of that made sense.
I love it. It makes so much sense. I just wanted you to just explain a little bit more what proprioception means, because I don't think many of my listeners would know what that is.
Yeah, sure. Sorry.
No worries.
And feel free to stop me, because, I've been talking about this stuff for so many years that sometimes I say words like proprioception and I forget that that's not in most people's daily vocabulary. So proprioception is basically just your brain's understanding, your understanding of where you are in space, where your arm is. So, for example, you might see this in people doing like a warrior two. You ask them to extend their arms away from each other, and they clearly think that their arms are like in a T shape, but maybe one arm is higher and one arm is lower, or they're not completely out to the side. They're kind of like in a little bit, like they're going for a hug, even though they think they're extending. That kind of thing would be an example of a lack of proprioception, a lack of awareness of where you are in space.
Thank you. I think that clarification is awesome. And I mean, for me, the reason why this stuff is so mind-blowing and I really want to push this content and information out there is because it means that there is a solution for everyone. Because instead of having this sort of just mechanical and very physical based approach to rehabilitation and movement, we can train smarter, not harder, and we can really find ways to help people with pain and issues that they can't fix by going to the gym. Because you can have 5 people with the same symptoms and the same exercise or prescription will not work for them. So I'd love you to elaborate a little bit more about that, and also how you feel about the sort of traditional exercise systems, how linear they are, and why it is that they don't factor in the higher order systems or the nervous system, because it's huge. It's like the biggest part of the puzzle, but it's not talked about. It's not really addressed.
Well, I think that the reason it's not really talked about is just because it's still quite nascent. Like neuroscience is still very new. I think anybody who studies neuroscience at all will happily agree with me when I say that there's so much more we don't know than what we do know. And I think we're just we're still learning so much, and it's really just it's just a relatively new science. I think that's a big part of it. But then also, I think it's kind of ironic, actually. I think it's quite funny that the fact that our visual system is it's a good example of how of proof that our visual system really is what our brain uses to get most of its information. And because what we see is all of these big body parts, right? Arms and legs and abs and pecs and glutes, and like that's what we see. And so we think, oh yeah, they're big and I can see them, so they're important. And our eyes are just so little, and we don't even see our vestibular system. And so I really do think that it's because we don't actually get to see it. It's not like you can like take a picture of somebody with like a really amazing I don't know, semicircular canal, which is one of the parts of the vestibular system. Or, you're not going to have like guys in the gym like being like, hey, check out how far I can bring my eyes to the right. Look at that. Because those are muscles, it's muscles, and that the extraocular muscles are what contract to move our eyes in different directions. And they are very, very important as far as your brain is concerned, because of the visual system, but because they're not physically, they're not very obvious. I think it's just kind of how we humans are. I mean, just look at humanity. Look at where we are. Look at how much time and energy and money we spend on our physical appearance that we don't bother with like our mental health, for example. Look how racist we are because of like, what is it, like 4 millimeters of pigment that separates the different colors of skin. It's like, so we are very, very visual creatures. And so I think that's another part of it. But yeah, and I think, like I said at the beginning also, if somebody's brain is happy, if as in this is safe, your brain is interpreting these squats are safe, then those squats are going to work. And so it's really only when somebody starts to have issues and the squats aren't working for whatever reason, and then that person also decides to have the curiosity to think, well, why, instead of just being like, well, I hate squats, I'm just not going to do squats anymore, because that's what most people do, right?
Yeah.
That exercise doesn't make me feel good, so I'm just not going to do it. And I'm guilty. Like, I hate running. And I'm sure it's
Me
like,
too.
if I could figure out, if I could like, if I really wanted to learn how to run and learn to love running, I could do it. And maybe a part of that is doing something to help train my brain to consider it safe instead of threatening. But instead, most of us are just like, well, I don't like that thing, so I'm just not going to do it. So there's all of these reasons, but I really do hope that more and more people who work as personal trainers, as well as physical therapists, and yeah, any kind of movement professional will consider studying more about the brain because it's yeah, it's empowering. Just to keep it simple, it's empowering.
It really is. I'm just going to put my light on because it's starting to get dark a little bit better.
Okay.
I just wanted to highlight something that you said actually. You mentioned the fact that you're continuously learning. And I think that that is such that's one of the reasons I love learning from people like you and Celeste, because you're so humble in your approach, and most of the exercise systems that I've learned before, it was very rigid. Like, this is the information, this is the sequence, this is how you have to teach it. And it never really evolves much. And you guys are constantly trying to find new research and keeping up with the science that is continuously changing. So it's so nice to have a conversation with you and kind of spread this awareness a little bit, because I do feel like the fitness industry, I have my issues with the fitness industry because of my own injuries and issues that I've had. And the fact that it comes from a place, I feel that it comes from a place of lack, always making us feel like we're not good enough. And if something isn't working, then something's wrong with us. It's not really the system. It's more cookie cutter, one size fits all approach. But I wanted to ask you, because I remember on your neuroscience course, the Neuro Yogis course that I loved, by the way, and I recommend to anybody listening, you mentioned that you managed to do something to fix or heal your eyesight. And I would love to hear more about that.
Um, I don't remember what you're talking about.
I think you
Can you give me more details
maybe
to jog my memory?
Maybe I'm getting this wrong, but I thought I had a memory of you saying something about how you don't need to wear a certain type of glasses anymore because you're doing certain eye exercises or something along those lines. Or maybe I'm confusing you with another person.
No, um I don't know. I've never worn glasses. Um so I wouldn't have said that, but for sure, yeah. Our intraocular muscles that help with like focus and pupil dilation and that kind of stuff, as well as our extraocular muscles that actually move our eyeballs around. They are muscles. They're muscles, and they're just like any other muscle in the body, and that they can get weak if you don't use them, and they can get strong if you do train them. And so, if eyesight issues um, are a matter of yeah, just those muscles becoming weak, then strengthening them can absolutely help you regain your sight and not need glasses potentially.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you guys were talking about somebody on in the Z Health curriculum that had
Maybe.
managed to do that. I don't really remember, but for me, that was such a kind of aha moment, because there's so many people that wear glasses and they always say that their eyesight is continuously getting worse. And when I tell them, oh, maybe you can do something about that by actually doing exercises, they're like, no, no, we went to the eye doctor, I forgot what they're called, and that doesn't seem to be much of a solution for us. So I just found that really, I wanted to highlight that for a moment.
Yeah, I think it goes with anything. And I think you have to remember that we live in a capitalist society where um, if people are making money from clients coming to them with problems, then they need for their business to keep growing. They need people to keep coming back. And so, unfortunately, I I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, but I think that it's always worth having a healthy level of skepticism around how much certain healthcare industries don't want us to know. Um, I mean, for example, like, well, it's probably like in every part of the body, you can actually like heal and regress damage done. Like your teeth can rebuild if you have cavities. Like you can rebuild your teeth.
I
Um,
didn't know that.
and yeah, because there's the teeth kind of go through two different phases. Like they are either demineralizing, where the acid is kind of eating away, but they can also remineralize. And so if if you're doing the right things with your oral health and that allows for that remineralization to occur, then you're the holes that are created in the teeth due to the demineralization can actually be filled back in.
How? Please tell me more.
I mean, I'm not an expert. I just heard I heard a dentist talking about it on TikTok. She was saying how um basically it's about managing the pH level of our saliva. So after we eat, it tends to become acidic, and that helps a certain bacteria grow. I think something like this. I can't. I'm not an expert here.
Okay. Super interesting though.
But yeah. And I think Huberman did a podcast about it as well,
Oh, I love
which I'm
him
sure
so
is
much.
yeah, he's okay.
You're not a fan.
He's I no, I think he's doing great work. I think he's doing really great work. It's just, yeah, there's just some things that I think he could probably address better, but yeah, overall, I like him.
Yeah, women's health. I feel like he doesn't speak much about women's health, and it is,
Exactly.
yeah. But I would love to kind of use this as a little segue into pain, because
Hmm.
it is so fascinating to me that you can actually have pain manifesting in your body for things that have nothing to do with that part of your body. And I
Hmm.
would love to hear it from you because you're you've got so much more knowledge than me.
Yeah, so this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm using every opportunity I can to teach people about pain because I feel like it's one of those things that, yes, there are some people who, in order to get out of chronic pain, they will probably need more intervention than what a little bit of education can do. But for a lot of people, I think simply understanding what pain really is and what's actually happening when they experience pain can go a huge way to helping them, if not get out of it, at least manage it better and it not be such a a detrimental part of their life. So if we go back to what I was talking about, how neurology put at its most simplest is just the input, interpretation, and output. Like I said, you're walking along, something brushes your hand, that sensation of something brushing your hand, that's the input. Your brain interprets, is this safe or is it threatening? And if it's threatening, then maybe the output would be move away from the direction that thing, because it might be a snake or whatever. So what most people believe is that pain is an input, and that if I put my hand on a hot stove, then the pain is coming from my hand. But that is not the case. Pain is an output. It is created by the brain and it is an output in every case. Okay. So if you're listening and you're like, did she just say that pain is created by the brain? Is she saying that it's all in my head? But it's all in everybody's head. Every kind of pain that anybody ever has ever experienced, and this goes for emotional pain too, it's created by the brain. It is an output. The input, let's say you put your hand on a hot stove, the input is going to come from thermoreceptors that tell your brain, hey, this is really hot. And nociceptors. So nociceptors are often called pain signals or pain receptors, but that is not the case. Nociceptors are threat signals or threat receptors, and nociception is threat signals. Um, then so your brain is going to put everything together, as well as like, oh, my eyes are looking at something that my brain knows is a hot stove, and my hippocampus is bringing up memories of my mother telling me not to put my hand on a hot stove because it'll burn me. And your brain puts all of these things together, and then the output will be, as well as the movement of pulling your hand away, the output will also be pain. And so what in that case, that's called acute pain, and it's very helpful, right? That pain is our friend, because without that pain, we would just keep our hand on the hot stove, and our skin and eventually deeper layers would just, yeah, get singed, right? So acute pain is our friend, and we as much as it sucks, it's very helpful because it helps us not get injured further. But the problem occurs when we get chronic pain, and this is pain that's described as lasting for more than 3 months, or lasting for more than like 3 months after an injury. And so that's not to say that somebody can't injure themselves and then re-injure and if you like break or let's say you sprain your ankle, but then you just keep walking on it, you may injure it again. But I'm talking, and so it's going to keep on hurting every time you injure it. But from the last time that you did something that created that tissue damage, if after 3 months it doesn't stop hurting, then it's considered chronic pain. And this is often something that the brain learns as a useful way to keep its human safe. Because as I said, the brain wants to keep you safe above all else. It doesn't care if you're happy. It doesn't care if you're, going to all of your friends' birthday parties. It doesn't care if you're able to do a handstand. It doesn't care about any of this stuff. It wants to keep you safe. And very often, its way of keeping you safe is making you feel like you just need to curl up in a ball and go to bed and not do anything. So it can do that by creating pain, by creating fatigue, dizziness, anxiety, right? Like there's so many ways that that the brain can make you just want to curl up in a ball and go to bed. And even though that we're thinking, it's easy to think, well, that doesn't make sense. Like that's not going to help me live my life. But that would be thriving, to go out and live your life. Your brain doesn't care about you thriving. Your brain cares about you living another day, right? So having said that, pain is it's the brain's most effective way to make you slow down, stop, pay attention, right? Maybe it'll pull out a bit of dizziness, a bit of fatigue, but you can kind of push past that. Pain, though, you're going to pay attention. And so if you are stressed, let's say things at work are just getting really, really bad. Your boss doesn't appreciate you. Your coworkers are slacking and you're doing all the work or whatever. And every morning you wake up and you are so sickened at the idea of having to go to work again. And so you're losing sleep and you're not eating well and you're not taking good care of yourself, you're not getting any exercise, and your brain starts to go threat, threat, threat. This is all like really bad. And so your brain is going, I know, I'll get my human to stop and curl up in a ball and go to bed. And so it'll say, what's the thing that made my human curl up in a ball last time and go to bed? It was severe abdominal pain, right? Let's say, yeah, a few years ago, you ate something weird or whatever. And so, bam, severe abdominal pain. And so then you get scared because you're like, oh my gosh, what is this pain? Where is it coming from? How long is it going to last? How much control do I have over it? And the more scared and frightened you are, the more you are in that threat response, and then it becomes this vicious cycle. right? Because then that is going to fuel the pain. And then the pain is going to make you feel more frightened. And then the fear fuels more pain. And your brain is like, yay, my human isn't thriving, my human is surviving. Um, and so it becomes, for as far as your brain is concerned, like this very successful pattern.
Yeah.
Um, and so when we can begin to understand that pain does not necessarily come from actual tissue damage or something wrong in the body, but that it's the brain going, something's not right. I want to try and keep you safe. Then we can start to, at first, hopefully, I always say step one is just try and get rid of the fear. Try to approach it with curiosity, because that is going to lower our stress levels massively and help us get in a much more towards that safety zone where, hey, brain, like telling the brain everything's okay. Because look, I'm not scared of this anymore. I'm not scared of this pain. I'm gonna stop this like vicious cycle of the my fear fueling the pain. Um, and and so that can be massive, just to learn to approach the pain with curiosity rather than fear. Um, and then like making little changes, saying like, well, what do I need to change? Like, does this pain always show up when things get really stressed at work? Does this pain always show up when I'm not sleeping well? Um, and and just, yeah, kind of go from there. Like I could talk all day about it, but
Love it. So
yeah,
I'm
there's a
curious.
summary at least.
Yeah, it's a beautiful summary. So thank you so much. But what does that mean for phobias and allergies? Does that mean that you can kind of rewire phobias and allergies? Because I assume that that would also be a threat response.
Yeah, I don't know anything about allergies. Yeah, I know that some allergic responses are definitely like a learned thing from the brain, but yeah, I don't want to go like tell people with a peanut allergy. It's fun. Give
Yeah.
me peanuts. Like, I don't really know that much about allergies. It is something I'd like to learn more about, but phobias, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I get over my fear of spiders just by trying to replace the fear with curiosity, and it took years, but and about a food poisoning in India,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
a story in itself, but just
Terrifying.
literally just literally being physically too sick to care about the fact that there's a spider the size of my hand just above me.
Oh, wow.
That was helpful. um or it's not that I didn't care about it. It's just that I couldn't do anything about it. I was like, I can't,
Oh,
I can't move right now.
oh no, that sounds
Either
horrible.
that spider is gonna just do its own thing and leave me alone, or it's gonna come and like be my worst nightmare come true and like attack my face. And of course, it just left me alone. Of course, the spider left me alone. But yeah, so phobias. Um, I mean, I can speak with experience again about the spider phobia. I mean, I used to be one of those people, like I would check my sheets. I would like pull all of my bedding off my bed and shake my sheets out before I could get into bed. Because if I got into bed without it, all I could think about was, oh, what if there's a spider in there? I would check my shoes before putting my shoes on. Um, and it was like, it was ridiculous. I was like, this is taking up precious time and energy. I've got better things to do. Um, and so like I started naming the spiders that I saw. I gave them names. Like there was one, and I remember the first one. The first one, it was this spider up in the corner of my bathroom. And instead of like getting my housemate to get it, being like, oh yeah, there's a spider in my bathroom, can you get it out for me? I just named it Tony. And so
Nice.
every time I walked into my bathroom and I saw Tony, I'd be like, hey, Tony. And the fear was still there, but I kind of just pretended that I didn't care. And I would like sit on the toilet and watch Tony and just see what it was probably a she, I don't know, a she spider named Tony. What she was doing, I don't know. Are there male spiders for some reason? Like,
Yeah. I mean,
I
we've
guess
got
there are male spiders, but
there definitely are. We've got loads here in Seychelles, and in the house we have a bunch as well. So we also named them. But the craziest thing that ever happened to me was one day I went to the toilet, to the bathroom, and I didn't realize there was a spider in the toilet bowl until I got up and I went to flush the toilet, and I was like, that could have ended so badly.
yeah.
That would have terrified me.
Yeah, but it didn't.
No,
And
they
that's what I
don't.
focused on. That's what I focused on. I think that's how kind of like that how you can rewire your brain because of course we are our default is to worry and think about worst case scenarios because that's what's going to keep us safe. If we can predict possible scenarios going absolutely horribly, then we are more likely to be safe than if we're just like, everything's fine, right? So that's how we're wired. But when we're living in a world where, if the worst case scenario actually did happen and the spider bit you, you can get treatment, you know, um, then it doesn't make sense to live in that headspace where all you're thinking about is the worst case scenario. And so rewiring your brain or like kind of rewriting those neural pathways for that thought pattern towards, well, what are some other things that could happen? Maybe the spider, it's like I was saying, with the spider in India, like maybe it'll just mind its own business and leave me alone, which is, of course, what it did. And that's what Tony did for weeks. Um, and until one day Tony wasn't there anymore. Um, and it started to teach me, like, because what I realized is I had this ludicrous notion in my head that every single spider I saw was out to get me, which is a very useful assumption to
Yeah,
have if you are living in, pre-modern modern medicine in the outback of Australia or something
absolutely.
like that.
Yeah.
Very useful. But living in like Wales where there are no poisonous spiders, like and I literally where Tony lived, where the place I lived where Tony was, I literally next door to me was a hospital. So that was another thing. I was like, okay, there's no poisonous spiders in this country. And if some poisonous spider has come over, like on the bananas or something, shipped from some exotic country or whatever, there's literally a hospital right next door. And so, yeah, rewriting pathways for all phobias is absolutely possible. And I think that a big part of it is recognizing like that phobia is there to serve a purpose, like fear of heights. Yeah, it's good to be cautious around places where you could fall to your death. Like it's not about trying to turn yourself into somebody that has no sense of danger whatsoever. It's about getting to yourself to a point where it doesn't have a hold on you so that to a point that you can't live your life normally.
Ah, I love that so much. And to be honest, when I started this journey, I was so angry about it because I was in a place in my life where I'd done all the like yoga, Pilates, functional training, and I thought, I've got everything. I've got everything down. I got my shit together. I'm taking care of my body. But I was getting rashes. I was getting hives and rashes all over all the time. For like a good 2 years, I was going to different doctors, dermatologists, you name it, and no one could really give me an answer. They kind of played guessing games and threw loads of medication at me. And at one point, it got so bad, I was on steroids and a bunch of antihistamines. And one doctor said to me, okay, I'm going to try you on antidepressants and hopefully that will reset your system. And I was just like, what the fuck? I'm not going to just take antidepressants, hopefully because it'll reset my system. That was kind of the last straw for me. So I decided to do my own investigation. And I realized that no one had, first of all, when I started digging into it, I realized that I was in a toxic relationship at the time. and I was miserable. I was in such a state of threat that my nervous system was just chronically stressed, and it was signaling the alarm bells, but I wasn't listening. And my rashes were just a manifestation of the turmoil that I was living. And not once did a doctor ask me, how do you feel? Are you happy? Are you in a healthy relationship? Do you like your job? What are your stress levels? Like, no one had ever asked me those questions. And the more I dug into it, and obviously I found people like you and Celeste, I was so angry at the fact that they don't teach you this stuff at school. Like, surely this should be the basis of our education, right? Understanding ourselves and understanding how we function so that we can better manage ourselves. Pain, it's huge. Pretty much everyone I know has pain. So why? And I really love your kind of approach to how you see the system. I saw one of your posts on Instagram the other day where you kind of had a mini breakdown because of everything that's going on in the world at the moment. And it really touched me because I also feel just this despair sometimes. And it's so crippling because the world seems to just be going crazy, and there's so much pain, there's so much injustice, and you feel so powerless. And you really see that it's not even a conspiracy theory. The systems around us are literally structured to exploit us and suppress us and keep us sick and desperate and consuming for this massive machine. So you can talk about that all you want. I actually have a question that I wanted to ask, which I'm actually, so this podcast is quite new to me, and I'm figuring out how to ask the right questions, but I'm playing around with a few questions that I want to ask every guest, but I feel like I want to talk more about this stuff with you. So I'd love to ask you straight away how you define true wholeness, and how do you think one can achieve that?
Hmm. Um,
It's a big question, so
it
take
is a
your
big
time.
question. Yeah, and I feel like I could just talk to you all day about some of the things that you brought up as well just now. But true wholeness, um, it's it's tough because I don't know if I really understand from a personal point of view what true wholeness is. You know, it's like um, I'm still searching for so many things. I suppose, you know, maybe it's recognizing that even though I'll never know everything. I'll always, the more that I learn, the more ignorant I'll know I actually am.
Yes.
Um, and it's yeah, maybe recognizing that despite that, and despite our all the ways that we may fall short or um, you know, make mistakes, demonstrate areas where we still need to learn and grow. We're still, I don't know,
It's a tough one.
we're still whole because because of each other, because we are all connected, we are all one. Um, I don't know. I feel like I'll be like lying in bed tonight or tomorrow morning, and I'll be like, oh, I should have said this.
No, don't
Um,
worry. I don't even know if
it's
it's a thing that can be achieved, like true wholeness. What does that even mean?
yeah. Because yeah, I mean, I don't feel like right now whatever is in my mind about what wholeness means, my feeling is, well, it's something that I haven't yet figured out or achieved. Um, and yeah, I don't know what that means. I
I
don't know
feel the
what
same.
it means that I feel like I haven't achieved it. Does that mean that I'm enlightened and enough to know that I will never be enlightened, or does it mean that I'm like, I don't, who knows? I don't know.
It's a really good question. Like, am I enlightened to know that I'll never know, or is it the other way around? I really love that, because I think one of the reasons I'm asking this question is because I also don't even know what it means to be whole in this world and how to feel wholesome, complete, like all the pieces are where they need to be, and also accepting of the fact that life is what it is and that there is so much beauty and so much good, but on the other side, so much pain and so much suffering. I have a really hard time with that. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm always curious to ask people how they kind of find balance and find some kind of wholesomeness, because I don't feel wholesome most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel like uh, we have to remove ourselves as individuals if we're going to look at this, because it's not just that we are one in we're each one individual in a humanity that's made up of over 8 billion, but also all of the people who came before us and the people who will come after us, and also the things that are part of our existence that aren't human. And it's all connected. It's all connected. We're just like one tiny little part of that. Um, and so we're like, because it's all connected, we we do impact it, and we do have a ripple effect. All of our actions have a ripple effect, but at the same time it can feel so infinitesimal that we feel powerless and sometimes hopeless. And so yeah, I I don't I don't know if I really believe that there's, ever going to be some sort of perfect balance where everybody lives in harmony and total peace and total happiness, because I it just doesn't seem to be the way that the universe works.
Mm.
And yeah, this is the kind of thing that just makes me want to like take a bunch of psilocybin and let the visuals take me through a journey.
Absolutely. I'm trying to plan my next trip. I need a good little reset, reboot.
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night. I was like, I think it's time for another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially now with the heaviness, because I do really feel like you can feel the heaviness. But I do
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, but I do love the idea that if we are just all one, if we are all pieces of the same consciousness that's just experiencing itself, then it makes sense that it's experiencing itself in the worst possible way and in the best possible way. And I find that that kind of soothes me a little bit, and I have to remind myself of that when I get really caught up and anxious and just super emotional about the things that I'm seeing and hearing most of the time. But this is kind of the perfect lead into the next question, which is, if you had a magic wand, how would you change the world, and how would you shape the future generations to come?
Uh, I think if I had a magic wand, I would just want to, I mean, there's so many answers I could give here, but I think that one single act that could make a huge impact for generations to come would be being able to put the little seed of information into every single person who has a womb, who is, a potentially giver of life, that they either do, depending on where they live in the world and where they were born, they do have the choice of when and if and how many children they will have. And if and or that if they don't feel that they have that choice, that they should, and that they should fight for the right to choose. Because I I feel like in this world right now, um, women are still largely not given equal rights, not given the education and the choice to, have a career and have creative outlets and do things to shape the world besides having babies. And that's not to say that a woman who wants to have children shouldn't have to have children, like absolutely. But the number of women who are kind of forced into motherhood, if not by just like sheer force in some way, at least it's because that's just all she sees. That's all she knows. She hasn't had her mind opened to the fact that she could do something else. Um, and if we had more equality for women, I think that we would see huge changes in the world. We would see more women in leadership positions, and I think that everything would just soften a little bit because for centuries men have ruled the world, and it's all about war and penises and testosterone and it's it's violent. I'm not saying that I hate men. I'm not saying all men are bad. I'm just saying that generally men, I think that the way that the world has been set up is like by men for men, and it's just not working. And so I know people will probably disagree with me, but that's how I feel.
Well, I agree with you in a lot of what you said. And one of the things I'm looking into at the moment is because I'm very much go, 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 got to get shit done. And if I'm not busy, I'm failing at life, which is just such a toxic approach to life. And I started learning that we as women don't function on a 24-hour cycle. We function on a 28-day to 30-day cycle. And that also blew my mind because the world is literally structured around a man's hormones, and it
Yeah.
completely disempowers us and our cycles as well. So I do think that there's a lot of truth in that, and people can get angry all they want, but you're allowed to express yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And if you look at like yin and yang, all of the sort of masculine, the things that are more masculine, that yang side of things versus the feminine, you can even see that the feminine traits and feminine qualities have been kind of demonized, or at least given a bad name. We consider those things more negative, like darkness and cold are feminine, whereas light and warmth are masculine. But it's like that masculine energy is that go, 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 go. It's that capitalist culture that we live in, that we have to grow, grow, grow all the time. We have to constantly just, yeah, it's always like be energetic all the time, be awake all the time, keep your lights on at night, don't let your pupils actually experience darkness. Um, and and if we brought in more of those feminine qualities, we would all, not just women, all of us would be able to slow down a little bit, have those like hibernation phases. Um, we would sleep better. We would sleep better. And then we would be feeling better, because a big reason that why people don't sleep well is because they keep their lights on right up until the time they would go to bed. They have like these bright lights on. Well, the brain thinks that it's daylight. So, embracing some of these feminine qualities like darkness, that's considered like not so great. Um, I mean, it's just in the word, like in like movies and pop culture, it's like the dark side and the darkness, like it's always the bad thing, but it's not bad. Um, and yeah, the um, there was something else I was going to say. Just yeah, the fact that the world that we live in, yeah, it's been made by men for men. I mean, even like more women die in car accidents because of seatbelts, because seatbelts have all been made based on male proportions. And in every, like almost every scientific study, you can guarantee that they just use men as their
Oh
subjects
yeah.
because they don't want to complicate it with women's hormones. But um, I mean, tampons weren't even tested with actual blood.
Oh
Like
wow.
when they test tampons to see how many liters they can hold or whatever, they're using fucking water. They're not even using like pig's blood. Like like
Yeah.
there, let alone actual menstrual blood. Like it's just it's all over it's all over our entire society, our education, even religion.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like women bleeding every month in order for us to have the ability to give life. That's considered unclean. Yet a man bleeds on a cross and we're washed in his blood to become saved. Like
Yeah.
it's everywhere that women and anything feminine is degraded and made to seen as less than or dirty or wrong. It's everywhere, even in the spiritual world.
Yeah, and medication as well. All the meds that are tested on just men, and
Mm-hmm.
it is sad, and I do hope that the world kind of moves in a different direction. But I also have a lot of trouble swallowing the spiritual bypassing that's happening at the moment because there's so much fluff out there, and it makes you feel again like something's wrong with you. You're not enough. You're not worthy. You're just not manifesting hard enough, or you're just not, tapping into your feminine or your masculine enough. And it's just like, how do you find the balance amidst all this noise that's going on? Even when you're trying to turn to a holistic approach, there's still so much fluff in there as well.
I think one thing that's helped me is like because I have a big platform, and so a lot of people look to me for answers, and people will even call me guru. Like they'll message me and they're like, "You're my guru," and I'm like, I know how little I know and how confusing I still find the world, and I'm doing my best. Like I barely read fiction books, and I'm not saying this as a brag or that other people should do this too. I'm just explaining that like I enjoy listening to podcasts and audiobooks. Hardly listen to music. I read nonfiction books. I hardly read fiction because I love learning. I love trying to understand. And maybe that's a safety mechanism for me as well. Maybe that's because ignorance makes me feel threatened. And so my brain feels safer if I'm trying to like gather all the knowledge possible. Um, so I've been trying to just drink up every bit of information from every part of like every discipline that I can for years and years and years, and I feel like I know a lot of stuff as a result. But even then, I'm still just like I don't know what, I don't understand anything about the brain. I don't understand anything about human psychology, about nutrition, about movement. Like these are the things that I would say I've spent the most time studying. And I don't know. I don't know anything. And and so if I don't know anything and people are looking to me for some sort of clear-cut answer, some sort of
Oh
like
yeah.
nice, neat little template that they can follow step by step, and then all their dreams will come true, then then there's got to be other people who are in my position, and for whatever reason, they think they go in a different direction. They go in the direction of like, well, maybe I do have all the answers. Um, and I think that that comes from a place of fear and scarcity or ignorance. And yeah, because it is a bit fear invoking and scary and uncomfortable to say, I don't know. I have no fucking clue. When somebody comes to you for answers. And so I think that that's a big part of it is that yeah, people are just or people forget that like their reality is their reality alone. And the way that they see the world is completely incongruent to how everybody else sees the world. Like we were all living in our own individual reality. Nobody else has the experiences that I have that make up the beliefs and the opinions and, you know, all of the memories that go into everything that I perceive in the world. So, but we forget that because the only reality that we know is our own. And so you know, I've been this person before. I no longer do it, but oh, I found this way of eating and it totally works for me. It makes me feel great. You should do it too. It worked for me, so it'll work for you too. And I think that that just comes from this ignorance that everybody is different.
Yeah.
And that just because it worked for you doesn't mean it's going to work for them. Um, and the spiritual bypassing, I think, again, it's ignorance or fear or a mixture of both. Um, because we're human, you know, even the most spiritual people are still human. They're still fallible.
And we're just kind of encouraged to always seek out the quick fixes and the
Mhm.
shortcuts. So then these systems kind of, that's how I see it. These systems take shape, exercise systems that are just one size fits all, and then nutrition programs that are one size fits all. And because we're just not trusting ourselves and not taking the time to experiment and explore and slow down a little bit. We just want everything determined and prescribed for us. And it is sad because it
Yeah.
takes us so far away from ourselves. So I would like to end with a question about your journey. What is the most important lesson that you've learned along your journey? And how do you apply that to your personal growth? And also, how does it apply to global evolution?
So I think the biggest thing, at least that comes to mind, because it's the most recent thing, is well, I had this kind of like almost like a vision. If you imagine like you go into a bookstore and say I don't know, you're about to start a business and you're like, oh, I don't know how to start a business. So you go to the section of all these like people who have written a book on like how to start a business and be successful. Um, and and then what you see on that bookshelf is your name on the cover of a book. And it turns out it's your experiences of how you built a business. And like, because it's like everybody that's written a book or has, you know, come up with a 5-step plan or whatever on how to do anything, it's because they did it and it worked for them. And that's great. That's great. And it's wonderful that they're sharing. I'm not against people sharing what worked for them because absolutely maybe 4 out of your 5 steps are going to work for me too. Um, but at the end of the day, you could write your own book on how you successfully did something. And also so recognizing that there's no right way or wrong way to do anything. There's only your way. And there's the way that works for you. And that doesn't mean like completely avoid doing what everybody else is doing. Like if it's working for a bunch of other people, it may work for you too, but don't forget that if something doesn't feel right, you can do it a different way. And I think that a big part of that is like taking that outside of like things that have maybe a more um, quantitative um, way of measuring them, like business, you know, like you can measure that by like how many dollars you make a year or whatever, right? But also things like your happiness in life. Like, um, for example, I'm 38 years old. I'm not married. I don't have kids, and I rent a house with my sister. Now, a lot of people may hear that and feel sorry for me. I know that there's a lot of people who would probably be like, oh God, I can't believe she's admitting that because they believe that to be happy, I would need to at age 38 be married with kids and own my own home with my husband, with my kids. And that's fine if that's what brings them happiness. But the thing is, I am really happy. I am so happy. I love that I don't have kids. I love that I don't have to have a extra child in the form of a husband. And I love that don't have to work, that I get to live with my sister, who is my favorite person on the planet. And yeah, and it's temporary. I'm going to move out soon and move back to the UK, like, because I'm not stuck in a mortgage. Like, it's so it's like recognizing that even if other people look at your situation and you think that they're like, oh, that's so pathetic. If you're happy, then you're happy. End of story.
Oh yeah, there's no blueprint to how anybody should do life at the end of the day. And you've got a wildly successful business. So yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody should feel sorry for you. I definitely want to learn.
I wouldn't say it's wildly successful. Replace the W with an M. It's
Okay,
mildly
mildly
successful.
successful. Well, I've learned a lot from you, and the course that I did with you and Celeste was really, really inspiring. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to chat to you because you do have such a
Thanks.
wealth of knowledge, and it's the kind of conversations that I really want to bring to Seychelles as well, because I feel like I'm drowning not being able to have these conversations with people most of the time here. And yeah, I hope that I'm sure a lot of what you've shared will definitely help people because a lot of people can relate, I think. And so I really appreciate you taking the time and yeah, doing this. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I stop recording?
Um, no, I'll just remind everybody listening that um, you have the power to impact this world with kindness and patience, compassion, and love, starting with for yourself.
Thank you. I love that. That's a beautiful, beautiful way to wrap up.